Hey guys, Jacob Wimpstead here with C.w. Architects. Welcome back to the studio. As you can see behind me, we have some materials in our material library, and in today's video we're going to talk about those materials, why they're important to achieve the certain look that you're trying to go for on your home, and some of the applications and underlying specifications that we're always thinking about when we're doing your design. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. It helps drive traffic to our YouTube and educate folks on architecture so they can create great design and create a great home for themselves in the future. If you haven't checked out our project starter kit already, it is a great resource for those that are looking to build a home. It's going to walk you through in a very general way the different steps that we go through in the office. So go check that out on our website. You can find it in the link below. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's first talk about the different wood products that we've used in the past, and let me just lay out some of the differences, some of the advantages, and some of the things that just to keep in mind when you're doing your design. So the first category here is just real wood. They undergo a certain process of putting certain resins and putting them under pressure. The idea here with wood is that wood is always going to tarnish and gray over time, but they undergo a certain process in the factory where that starts to eliminate some of the weathering. This product here is a ebony product, so again, they undergo a certain treatment in order for it to reduce its graying. With real wood, you're always going to have graying and maintenance issues over time regardless of what product you use. So it's just important to keep that in mind. This has a nice kind of caramel color to it right now, but after about a year or two of setting in the weather, depending on whether there's sunlight actually being shined on it or if it's under a soffit, so it's got a lot of covering, you might get different variations of color over time. So if you're okay with the graying, you may be interested in some of the real wood products with those treatments. This product right here is called a Shou Sugi Ban. This is an ancient Japanese technique for actually charring the wood to preserve it. By charring the wood, you prevent it from being susceptible to bugs, and then also it, of course, is not going to lose its color over time as bad, and then it's also weather resistant. These are two different types of charred wood products. This is a charred wood that hasn't been charred as much, so you can see that it has the black color, but it doesn't have that kind of alligator skin look to it. So if you char it for a longer period of time, it's going to get that kind of those lines in it that allow it to look like alligator skin. So got a lot of clients that have used this in the past. It gets like a really cool look on the overall kind of building scale. We've used this on projects in like East Tennessee on a resort project that we were working on. Haven't gotten into using these ebony products all that much just because a lot of our clients don't really like the graying over time. The most popular that we tend to see folks using is the synthetic wood. This is a Resista wood product, so it's made out of rice husks. It's actually a sustainable material, and it's got this nice kind of texture to it. It does kind of feel plasticky, so that's something to kind of watch out for when it comes to synthetics. They're not going to tarnish over time as quickly, so you're not going to get the graying and things like you will see with the real wood. And then some of the nicer synthetic wood products do have kind of a texture that allows it to really look like wood. They also have different profiles with synthetic wood. You can see here that this is a siding profile, so the way this works is it gets nailed up just like siding. And then there's these holes and things in it that actually allow the product to be a lighter weight. Okay, so this synthetic wood is actually one of my favorites, at least right now, and the reason for that is because it's aerated and it has some of that nicer texture to it. It feels nice, so that's one thing about wood. Wood is a natural material, so you naturally want to kind of touch it and interact with it. So if it's close to your, let's say you've got a pool deck or something like that where there's a lot of people hanging around, if there's going to be a wood product close to you or close to people, you'll want something that actually has a nice texture to it, as opposed to like a Trex product. A Trex product is a synthetic wood. You know, it is very, very durable, but the graining and stuff that they put in it and how much plastic that's in it makes it really, it doesn't really feel like wood. So just be careful when you're selecting your wood products and make sure you're actually putting your hands on it. That way you know that this actually feels like wood. It doesn't just look like wood. So those are some of the synthetic products that we've used in the past. So the next product I'd like to talk about is brick. So when I talk about brick, I talk about brick veneer. And all that really means is that the brick isn't actually structural. It is a skin that sits about an inch away from the actual structure. And because it sits an inch away from that structure, it is technically what we call a rain screen system. One of the things that I see folks doing all the time is they're selecting a brick that has a lot of tumbling and a lot of different shapes to it. It has a lot of different colored mortar joints and things like that. In our firm, we tend to focus on modern architecture. So when you're creating a modern home, you want to do a couple of things when you're selecting your brick. Modern design is typically something that is very simple. We're using simple forms, simple detailing, and that extends into the material selection. So when you're selecting a brick color and you're selecting a mortar joint, you tend to want to stick with just solid colors, not a whole lot of variation between the colors, between brick to brick. And then you also want to select a mortar joint that pretty much matches the brick itself. The idea here is that you're creating a mass wall, something that feels heavy and it looks heavy, and it just slightly has a texture to it. You want to stick with a very square, clean brick and what we call an FBX brick. So using the FBX brick, something without tumbling, and using a mortar joint that is consistent is going to give you the cleanest modern look possible. Now, FBX brick is known to cost quite a bit of money compared to like a paint grade brick or a red brick. A lot of times we're speccing, darker colored bricks. There is an alternative that I recommend to folks a lot, and that is just simply going with a paint grade brick, which is just a cheaper brick that's got a color to it that most folks don't like this orangey red kind of brick. It's not very popular, but it's a cheaper brick, and then what you can do is you can go in and you can actually stain it. Now, stained brick and painted brick do give you that consistent, clean, modern look. That is that the mortar joints and the bricks are all a consistent color, and you just have that slight variation in the texture. But the big difference between painting a brick and staining a brick is if you stain it, you're actually going to still get that rough texture, whereas painting it is going to cover a lot of that texture up and it's not going to have that nice feel to it. So if you're doing a modern house and you're thinking about using brick, I highly recommend that you go with consistent mortar joints in terms of color, consistent bricks, consistent shapes in the bricks, and then if your budget is a little bit on the lower end, consider staining the brick. That way you don't get into the cost of actually buying a nice black brick or whatever color you're looking at. So previously we talked about brick and how brick was a rain screen. Well, what is a rain screen? No matter what you put on the exterior wall, rain and water will eventually get through a lot of these materials, especially the porous ones like brick. So brick has a lot of porosity in it, and not a whole lot of water gets through it, but some does. And what you don't want is water to actually be setting on wood and start to allow rot to start to take place. But when we talk about rain screens, most of the time we're not talking about brick veneer, we're actually talking about more of these products. So what stucco is basically just cement that's been smeared onto a wall, and in this system we are smearing that cement onto a backer board. So just like when you're building a shower, you've got backer board, that is this concrete board that gets mounted to the wall. In this case, on the exterior wall, we're going through a finish coat application. In this particular system, you have the sheathing, which is the exterior panel that goes on the outside of the house that provides structural stability. And then above that, you have this gray product that is a weather barrier. So a lot of times what you'll see in residential construction is what they call a Tyvek, which is that paper wrap that they put on the outside of the house. In this case, it is actually a fluid applied wrap, if you will. And then you've got this netting here, and the point of the netting is to provide an air gap. The netting is providing a small space for that water to drain and allow us to prevent rotting because the water is draining out and away from the finish and the building. Now, stucco does have a bad rap because there have been some pretty bad instances of stucco creating rot, but the main thing to know when you're doing stucco is you have to have some sort of a rain screen system in place behind the finish Otherwise, you're going to get into those situations which gave stucco such a bad rap. So when we specify stucco, we are always specifying a rain screen system to provide that weeping. And then, of course, as I said before, we do a lot of modern designs, and stucco is very popular amongst modern architecture.
We're headed out to the Brentwood house, the yard house, and we're going to take a look at some of the exterior materials that we're using, some of the stuff that we covered in this video. We're incorporating stucco, the synthetic aerated wood product, and then also some of the brick. So right now we've got just a standard brick over here with just a pretty affordable mortar joint. We're going to actually end up going back and staining it to make it look more modern and consistent. So the main trick here, especially on modern designs, is you want a brick that's pretty consistent, doesn't have a lot of tumbling or anything in it, very consistent shape, very consistent color, and then the mortar joint needs to match it most of the time. That's generally what we try to do in our office. The other part of the home that we're looking at is we've got this C channel, or this C shape that goes around, and it defines the major portion of the house. That's the living, dining, kitchen, and also the exterior spaces, the major exterior spaces. That's defined with a white stucco material. And then we're cladding the soffit, and eventually we'll get a deck down below, but there's these kind of wooden elements that are meant to be closer to you, more warm and more inviting. So that's kind of the finishes that we're working on over here on the C shape near the entry of the building. So from the front, there was that kind of C shape. Well, it makes this kind of ribbon, this white ribbon that makes its way around the house, and it really creates this transition between the yard and the major spaces inside the home. So it's identifying where the living, dining, kitchen is. You can see where the master suite is, where the smaller ribbon kind of comes around. But that whole ribbon is meant to create this transition and to be continuous all the way around the house. This is why it's important to be really selective with your materials. A lot of times I'm focusing more on contrast than I am materials very early on in the concept, but you can see that that gets carried throughout. Even when we're this close to finishing the construction, you've got this sharp contrast between that white ribbon and some of these darker elements. That allows it to give it that 3D pop and start to look more geometric. So this is a great example of what we talked about in the studio when we were talking about that synthetic aerated wood. We're actually using that on this project. It's that band material where the columns die into that white roof ribbon. So you can see it there. That is actually not finished. We actually like the look of it so much that I don't think we're even going to stain it. So that product is just kind of in its raw form. So one of the things that we do a lot is we build these window walls. Well, in this particular system, we actually had to hide some steel headers inside. You can see that there's a larger break that sets between the upper windows and that sliding door. All that stuff got covered with brake metal, and the idea there is that you're using these metal pieces to make it look like an entire window system. So even though we're hiding structural steel within it to make it actually work, we are considering matching all of the mullions and the window dividers with some brake metal that brings the whole thing together.
Well, that's it for exterior finished materials. Hope you enjoyed the video. This is the final rendering of the yard house. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, go and check out our website. We've got blog content on there for additional education. Hope to see you in the next one.